We are up. Hello, 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 Mr. Culture Craig, Sir Craig, Mr.
Sir Craig.
Forman.
I haven't got that one. I haven't
Craig.
officially been given that yet.
Well, I'm happy to have knighted you on LinkedIn
Knighted me.
Live. So I guess before we dive into everything today, I'm such a big fan. I love your energy. I'm happy that we got connected. Can you give a brief overview of who you are, what you do?
Yeah. Also, I'm checking LinkedIn. I didn't see it come up yet. But hey, everybody. My name is Craig Forman. I am a lead people scientist at a company called Culture Amp. Culture Amp provides software and tools for organizations to listen, understand, and take action around employees, voices, both large scale, so engagement surveys, onboarding, diversity, equity, inclusion, but also we've moved into the space of performance management, manager one-on-ones, all tools built to really humanize the experience, put the power of culture and understanding what's going on back into the hands of the organization, help them understand what they're learning. And then also the final piece, which is so important, what do you do with that information? What kind of action and how do we drive a better workplaces? That's our what. But I do want to say it's really important. What attracted me to Culture Amp and a lot of my work here has been around our why, and that is this belief that a better world of work is possible. And it's, I know there's a lot of talk, those sorts of things, but I've been here over 3 years and I'm just blown away at the investment and how much energy Culture Amp puts into creating community, creating conversations, bringing people together, even if they don't use our tools around this shared collective idea or mission. And on our people science team for a couple of years, I worked directly with our clients, thinking about why are you setting up surveys the way you're setting them up? What are the questions you're asking? What are you trying to learn? And are you sending signals that are unintentional? Because surveys send signals, whole side thing we can talk about. Although that's evolved, I'm so passionate about the space. I just started putting myself out there on social media and going to events, and eventually drifted it over to the marketing side. And I've helped us build both our Culture First global conferences in 2018 and 19, working with amazing people, content speakers. We've also built some other events that I was very involved in. And most recently last year, we decided to kind of evolve our community and start a chapter model. So creating chapters around the globe, helping all those people in the world that want to have these conversations come together and facilitate conversations about the future of work or where we're going and how we can behave differently at work. And they asked me to help support that. So it's been really joy of my life. We're up to 35 chapters now globally. We're growing. You can go to cultureamp.com and there's community up in the right-hand corner. And that's what I spend most of my time right now doing is onboarding, finding great people that want to lead these conversations, supporting them and building a community of leads, and they're out building communities around them. And it's pretty magical thing. And I never set out to do that, but that's where it is right now. So it's pretty awesome.
I feel that every single organization would want their employees to be able to describe what they do in that way. Like that was so just off the cusp and like succinct and perfect and descriptive and highlighted your major projects. It's like, I don't think you get that if you don't have a strong culture. Like your employees don't know like if you can't go stop someone in the hallway at work and say, what is the why within our organization and what is the what and how, not just with what you do, but overall, then does culture exist per se?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Here's what I'll say to that. And just an interesting thing in kind of part of what I share often is that being careful with that word culture, because culture always exists. The question is, are we? Yeah. I like the definition of culture, and culture gets thrown around a lot. So I think it's important we define my high level definition of culture across all of it is how we do things around here. So there is culture. I was in the military. There's culture in the military. There's culture in prison. There's culture in our families. There's culture at work. There's culture in our marketing team. The question is, are we intentional about our culture? And particularly in the workplace, I think it goes a level further. Our CEO talks about your brand is your promise to your customer, but your culture or your values, which I think underpin your culture, are how you deliver. And I share that because I think it's really important to differentiate culture in general. We come in and out of cultures all day long. When we come together at work, there's a reason. Like if the thing doesn't happen, we don't come together anymore. So what is that brand? What is that promise? What are we delivering? And how are we collectively going to behave to deliver that? So for me, it's about being intentional about culture versus letting culture just happen. And then it becomes, like I think the best organizations understand and craft the culture to deliver on the objective. And quickly, I'll just give an example I like to use when it comes to the military. You know, culture is not just warm and fuzzy. It can be. It depends on what we're building for. I mean, the 82nd Airborne Division can get 70,000 people anywhere in the world in 24 hours. I mean, think about that task. That's not a culture of let's come together and adapt and talk. And I mean, that needs command and control. That needs a certain type of culture. In most of our experience in our workplaces, we're asking people now more than ever to be adaptive, to be creative, to be flexible, fluid. I think you need a certain type of culture, which is the kind of culture that we're often talking about, right? Psychological safety and belonging. Like those are the kinds of things. If you really want people to be creative and think outside the box, you can't keep them scared. So that's my spiel on culture.
I want to get into some theories and some strategies and such. And if anyone is just logging in, we have Culture Craig with us, who's speaking about all things organization and personal wise in regards to culture. But how did you get started in this space? How does someone become the people scientist? How does someone start creating the communities of culture in different cities? Like that's...
Man, so I'll tell you, this is going to hit on what I know about you, and is not just I'm connecting those dots, but it's not why I'm answering the question this way. My career has been an interesting one. It was not a straight line, and what I want to say is that I got clear on my purpose or my mission about 7 or 8 years ago, and there was a very noticeable shift in everything that happened afterwards. So to say you do X, Y, and Z to be a people scientist, I don't know. I can tell you on our people science team. At Culture Amp, everybody has a master's or a PhD in some sort of behavioral science. So, sure.
Wear a lab coat. Like if you ever have an interview to become a people scientist, lab coat.
Tubes of people floating in fluid behind me, and yeah. Look, it's funny. We can talk about that. That title is interesting. You know, it's a whole story into itself. What do you do when you go to a company and they put a title like that, which I like, but like, I'm not a scientist. I've never seen myself as a scientist. However, what I wanted to say is that I've always been really passionate about people. I've always been interested in business. But like I grew up and it was a little rocky and I didn't like really understand how to apply myself in school. And I took some time off and then I wanted to go to school, but I didn't have money. So I went to the military. Then I went back to school at 25. I finished my undergraduate degree. I wanted to be in California. So I moved to California. I started working. There was always the underpinning. I mean, I could tie the dots and say the things have been there. What I was attracted to, what I wanted, the kinds of organizations, and the ones that were really bad work experiences and why, which drove me back to get my master's degree. And instead of getting my MBA, I decided to get an organizational psychology. It was wonderful, probably the best educational experience I ever had. And so that was a hint. But still, my career did not just shift. You know, I had to go about. I had kids. I had a family. But continued to network, to read, to be interested, did my own personal work, was able to finally say, here's my purpose. And when I could do that, when it all came together and I could look and say, my mission is to help the world work better by improving the places we work. And I could own it and not be scared of it. Not sure. Like it was like truly I'd done my own work around that and was like, yes, that's it. That's what I'm here to do. Things started to shift. And I was in tech. I always talk about like this lily pad. You know, I'd gotten myself into tech through education. And then I got myself an HR tech. So now I was finally working with people that were doing this sort of work, continued to network. And I was at LinkedIn for a year on contract. And when that was coming due, a friend said, you should check out Culture Amp. They were kind of just growing in the space, but I loved what I was seeing. I was saying these sorts of things to them. And they're like, sure, we love it. You know, you want to help the world work better and you want to be a speaker and a thought leader, like do your day job, do it well, and we'll support you. So, you know, I do want to call out Culture Amp support too, because I got there and they really gave me the space to lean in and to play with my zone of genius and what I wanted to be doing. And I got to experiment and see what worked and didn't. And they never really, it's been a pretty amazing 3 years of what's happened since. So I would say is I don't know what to tell somebody other than just get really clear on what are you here on this planet to do? And I have this deep belief that you kind of knew it. You knew it early. I mean, the work is getting back to figuring it out. And just do that every day. Like every day is like, how can I help the world work better by improving the places we work? So like I said, I didn't set out to be a community builder. It's just the vehicle right now that feels like the vehicle that allows me to live out what I want to live out in the biggest way possible. And, you know, and letting go of like some sort of job or thing versus how do I just do this every day, help the world work better by improving the places we work.
What I like about your story is that you found an organization, you found the culture, that you wanted to work in. And I think so often when people are looking for their next step, when maybe they have clarity of who they are, they don't believe that exists within an organization. For some reason, the story I think that's been promoted a lot is the only way to get what you want is to go get it yourself outside of everything else. But I think we're seeing more and more the organizations that are succeeding, that are thriving, that are growing in this day and age, have that culture that you're talking about, where they listen to their employees, where they work with their employees. And then that itself just makes the culture that much stronger.
Yeah. I mean, look, I did. I mean, in my own journey, believe me, I've had some really tough work experiences. And in retrospect, I'm so grateful because those all were part of the, this is a cliche again, that like looking back, but they're all part of the puzzle. And I see what I learned and what I pull on that. I think about those experiences and why I do the work I do to keep other people, as few as possible, to experience that, and what a bad work experience can be. And there are two sides. I did find this company, and I think that we make choices. But in my work, I'm talking to organizations a lot about policies and things that we can do. Yet the deeper I go into this, it's like this other thing of you want to fix it out there. You want to fix policies and company, but like the work also is here. So where I go with that is find that company, but also like find it in you and show up that way every day. And if you know what, if you lose a job because you're showing up from your values or whatever, like I assure you, if you're really steadfast in what you believe and who you are in the world, and you're coming from a place of like authenticity, that you're gonna find that match eventually. But I want to share what I say. Oftentimes people get the Culture Amp, right? So Culture Amp is a great company. We have great values, and like I see a company that's leaning into it. And I want to say we have our stuff. Like 440 people working together. It's tricky. Like we weren't designed to do this, so it is a bit tricky. And stuff comes up, and I think it's the culture that helps us. But so people get to Culture Amp with what you're talking about. Like, wow, here, what like awesome. I want to be part of a great company, and that's truth. But like when I talk to new employees and say, okay, but you're also here now. So like, what you can't just take from the culture, or we'll eventually deplete it. So what are you giving? Also, how are you showing up to make this the culture that you want? And like, what are you bringing to this culture? Because we need that. If you're just sitting on the sidelines and taking it in, or in a bad culture and doing nothing, then that's your contribution to culture. So I'm always playing that line of like fixing it, but fixing it, and like empowering people show up and be the culture that you want, and like let the world evolve around that too.
Yeah, I speak to that similarly. Like when there are poor leaders within an organization, and someone's like, "Well, what do I do? I need to leave. I need to get away from this leader." It's like, well, have you tried leading up? Mm-hmm. Have you tried actually showing up the way that you want your leader to show up, and being that like shining star, right? That can then others can reflect from. So if someone came to you and said, "Look, I want to help influence the culture within my organization," mm-hmm. How do I do that?
Couple questions. The first thing I do is I would ask about level of influence. I mean, if it's a vice president, I think that's a different conversation than it's somebody that just showed up. I was thinking about that today. I took a walk this morning. I was thinking about just that question. Like, I think that's important. Like, you show up, it's your first day on the job, you're right out of school, and you're beating this is wrong. And the culture, like, I promise you, the culture is going to reject you before you impact the culture. So it's like understanding your level of influence. What can you change? What can't you change? What's in your control? And I think starting from that place, number one. But the second piece I thought was like, yeah, what you just said, be the change you want to see in the world. If I was talking to that person, I'd say, what's frustrating you the most? They're not transparent, or they say one thing and do another. And I'd say, cool. Like, okay, like, I think it's number one, you reflect and, speak from yourself and share that when you have the opportunity to share that. But number two, how do you show up? Like, when are the times that you're not always being transparent or fully, authentic? How are the times when your values and actions are misaligned? Is there anything you can do there? I think the power is really this idea of like, be the change you want to see in the world. And I say that because in my own journey, I've leaned into that. It's kind of wild. It doesn't happen overnight, but slowly stuff like that's the best way to impact change, that not demanding it of others, but do it yourself. And but steadfast, like if you're showing up that way and the culture, if you believe that we should treat each other well and you're seeing sexism or ageism in your organization, it's not going away. Maybe you need to maybe your values are like, this isn't the right place. And I need, sometimes, you vote with your feet. And I'd like to believe that the best companies are going to win because they're attracting the best people, and the companies that aren't, people eventually be like, I don't want to work there. And the talent's going to go down, and we're going to see. So I think it's a play, but remembering there are times I believe that like I talk to people that are stuck in these toxic cultures and like they feel like they have to stay to fix it. And I do believe there's a time where it's like the world's missing your impact because you're stuck trying to change that versus go somewhere that's going to amplify you and like let you fly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that balance? I mean, that's a conversation, but I think what I would say, I mean, even with a leader, I'd say, you know, a leader probably has more influence, and we can talk about some of the things that the mechanisms and the levers that they have, but I'd still say the same thing. You know, what are the things that frustrate you most, and how can you show up more that way?
Yeah, I think how do you know when to leave is a very interesting question, but like you said, it's a conversation. You know, as you were talking, I'm envisioning, you know, those art pieces. I don't know the artist, but it's just like a bunch of little dots. And those dots, if you step far enough away from the painting or one full picture, like that's what culture is, right? All these little dots, all these different employees, and if you step away, this is this culture. And so if you zone in on what sphere of influence do you have, like how many dots can you impact based on how you show up, like that like you said, completely changes your potential strategy to influence organizational culture.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, again, and also staying open that I look back and believe me, like I said, like it's been an interesting road, but now I can see the reason and I got something for all those pieces. So I'd say to somebody that's early in their career, like what's this opportunity teaching you? It may be teaching you about the right way to do what you think is the right way to do things, but it may also be a lesson in what not to do and something you can take with you from that. So I look back at my career now and can see that there's a period of time where it's like figuring it out and also like collecting the experiences and the tools. So then I could one day, and I'm sorry if there's a sound coming through, I got a little bit of noise. So hopefully that's all right. I think it's going off now.
I might take a nap though. It's kind of like white noise, and I'm just getting a little tired.
I could also, you know, there it goes. So yeah, I mean, I think that where was I with that? I was saying, I got distracted there for a second.
I'm curious. It's so impacting culture.
Yeah,
impacting culture, and I would even just say, let's rewind for a second and say, where do we even start? I think a lot of companies nowadays and a lot of people, like culture has become a major focal point. What are organizational values? What makes up our culture? What do we want it to be? How does it influence our vision and our mission, our hiring process, our talent development processes? And let's say someone's just getting to the drawing board. Like this is something we want to put front and center. Where do you start?
What comes up for me is what I think, what I said before about Didier, of getting clear on like, what's your brand, what's your promise to the world? What are you, to your stakeholders, right? What are you looking to deliver in the world? And then how do we want to go about how do we want to show up to do that? Like, what are the fundamental, like the things that if we're really in a bind, we can look at and say, you know, these guiding principles that will help us do that, which I believe are your values, but not just like the values you want, like really taking stock in what are the values, and this is where like integrity, honesty, like to me are table stakes. These are individual values. This is what I expect people to show up in the world.
Yeah. So to that point, like are there universal values that are important for every culture? And this is, I think, a little,
that's what we just spoke about. Like if we talk about culture, the way we do things around here, I mean, I think about things like integrity, honesty. These are really important. And I'd like to believe that people I interact with, these are values that individually they hold. However, with an organization, remember, it's about what do we take all these people with different values and what can we hang all of those values on together and our collective values that will drive a successful organization, which I think is different, right? Like ours, courage to be vulnerable, learn faster through feedback. Like these are not typical, like my personal value isn't learn faster through feedback. I mean, I'd like to like get feedback and learn, but like that's how we choose as a company that does feedback to live into what our mission, right? Like trust others to make decisions. Again,
so coming up
value.
For me, just a question real quick, because I studied values in my research, and is it important to have a diversity of values? So let's say it's think fast. Do you want someone on the team that says, hold up, what about this? Like, do you want that on the team, or do you want a complete alignment of values there?
Well, if your value is think fast, I mean, I'd like to see, okay, here's what I love to see that I've seen some organizations do. Values with a series of behaviors that you'll know when you see it. So like helping people connect our values with the behaviors in our organization that show that. look, maybe you're like a race car driving team and your values think fast. Like that's a pretty valuable thing. Or like some, surgeon or something. I don't know, like something where that's a real value. Like we need to be fast and nimble or people can get hurt. I don't know. But then the next piece is like, what does that mean in our organization? And does it mean that if somebody says, hold up, wait a minute, that they're not living the values? That's that exploration each organization needs to go through. So back to your point, and I think it's really distilling down to these core, and it can't be 20. I mean, like if you're in a pinch, if you're in, when I was at LinkedIn, for instance, one of their values was like always include something about including the end user in the discussion or whatever. And at all their executive and leadership meetings, they always left an empty seat that was for their end user. It was a symbol. But it was a way to say if they got into a pinch, they said they'd look at that seat and say, what would that person want? Right? So there's an example, like, these are constructs. There's not a steadfast on this, which makes it tricky. And you can't do what the other company did. They have to be uniquely yours. And then what we do at Culture Amp, and I think organizations can do when we onboard new employees, we go through a session where we help them identify and talk about their personal values and how those connect to the collective values so they can anchor their values on the collective values. And we all are on this ship kind of going together. While like everybody has individual values that are out of alignment, not out of alignment, that are not the exact same. And to your point too, just because of an organizational value, remember we talked about before, like we're moving in and out of culture, the way we do things around here often. There's a unique culture on my small team, my marketing team, right? There's a culture on our bigger customer team, and then there's a bigger culture at our organization. It's okay. Like there are the way we do things around here in layers. But I'll tell you what, saying it because you want it to be and not doing it and never addressing it is it's better not to even have values. Like nothing is worth, like we as humans want to follow, when we do follow, we want to believe we're safe. If you tell me these are our values and this is what we're aligning around, and I'm not seeing that really, I'm seeing a complete, then it undermines what my belief and my faith and my ability to follow. So I would just say take it very seriously once you institute those, because it's not that you don't have to live them perfectly every day, but owning and saying we're striving for this, and here's where we fell short, and here's where we're doing well. But I think the number one biggest thing that undermines culture is this idea of like, here's what we do, but the leaders don't really do it, but you do.
Yeah, it's that level of consistency. It's like you can say you have a certain type of culture, but what your culture actually is what you consistently show up as. And if those don't align, then you don't have trust. Because you could have a really horrible culture, but if it's consistent, at least people know what to expect. And so there's actually a level of safety in that.
I'm big on that. Like if you're like a finance company and you're like, we're all about money at all costs and greed, like I wouldn't want to work there. I don't like that, but I'd rather you put that on your wall and say, you want to come work here? We're competitive. We win at all costs. Like,
yeah, you know what you're signing up for.
Like at least they're being honest and they're not like fooling. People aren't getting there and getting beat up that didn't want that. I think is really important. So yeah, like, what do you stand for? What are you about? Even if it means you have to lose a deal, even if it means, this whole thing, like, no jerks. Is that true? What if the jerk is your highest performing salesperson? You willing to like own that? Because if not, like, remember I just spoke about, I think it's fascinating. It's just somebody that enjoys, psychology and human behavior. This idea I spoke about before, how effortlessly we can move through cold. I can put you with your friends right now and you will drop into a way of behaving. Then I can pull you out and put you at work and you'll drop in, and you'll go home and spend time with your family and you'll adjust there. And then you'll go to the grocery store and act a certain way. We are so astute to the rules and how we behave in certain environments. That just tells me how fine-tuned that sensor is, which means even if we can't put words to it, if you're in an environment or culture where there's misalignment with what you're being told how we behave, and we know it, like we know it so instinctively. So yeah, like you can pull and give yourself story. And that's what I've loved about my job, is to be able to walk in with data and like talk and have real data to like help that conversation along and help bring down the blinders, especially at the executive levels, to help them really lean into it and look at what's going on.
Yeah, because how do you actually find out that information? You're sitting on your round table in your conference room, or now at home and you're on your desk with your kids next to you. But like, how do you know what your employees are thinking? You're in this big organization. You're these senior leaders, and you have an idea. You're like, of course they're all happy. Of course they have best friends at work. Of course they understand that we care about benevolence and all that jazz. But then in reality, your employees are, on WhatsApp just ripping apart everything that's going on.
Oh yeah. And the truth is, if you've gotten to that point, you've already probably, not that you can't fix it, but now your employees are on WhatsApp. Because why? Because they didn't have a voice where they needed it. So they're going to go find a voice somewhere else. And that's the last thing you want, is like, on your Glassdoor, everybody's talking about your company there. So to answer your question, I mean, this is the work. And like, yes, it's Culture Amp, but there are other things. Having a good tool to listen, and there,
so listening devices.
Listen, well,
just kidding.
I want to be careful with listening. Yeah, but it is a listening device. But here's the deal with Culture Amp. You can see the logo up top. It's an Enzo, right? And the Enzo, first of all, it's open Enzo, which stands for, it's wabi sabi. It's like this art of imperfection, which I think is beautiful. That there is no perfect. It's not perfection. And the Enzo is a whole story. If you don't know about, it's like this meditation. Once you start the stroke, you can't pick it back up. But we talk about not just, so it's collect, understand, and act, right? So what you just said, listening, that's the collect part. I mean, I can put a microphone in a room and listen, right? So the first part is, how do you run a great survey with well thought through questions that are sending the signals that you want? You're not asking questions of people that you can't, if everybody tells you that they don't like, the non-flexible work schedule, but it's a retail operation where you can't change people's schedules. Don't ask that question, because you're sending a signal that you're listening. And none of us like to be like, you're coming to me to ask my opinion, I share it, and nothing happens. So collect and think about how you're collecting it in a good way, in a way that's aligned with who you are. Second, understand. So, especially when you start to get into large numbers, hundreds, thousands of people, how do you take that data in a snapshot and understand, and that's where Culture Amp comes in, to help tools to help you quickly identify and see the spots you should be thinking about and looking at. And then finally, I'm a manager. You've given me this tool. I can see my team. I see my biggest areas that are related to engagement, which I could go into that. It's like, how, knowing which of these things that we've looked at impact engagement, which is this understand piece. And finally, so what do I do? And that's the collect, understand, and act. And that's the piece of, in our tool, we surface in what we call inspirations. So to a manager, it's like, okay, you check that open and honest two-way communication is something your team's looking for more of. Here are 10 things other companies have done or other individuals are doing, to get them thinking about what could you do at your company. Collect, understand, act, repeat. Like, that's the Enzo, right? Like, get into a rhythm of listening, understanding, taking action, communicating out that, like, I heard you. Here's what you can expect next. Repeat. And like, that's a very human cycle of feedback that we're trying to help organizations get to. That's, now to answer your question, that's, how do you, there are two levels of this. If my company's 1,000 people, you need a window of time, and that would be like an engagement survey, not always on. Like, I need 2 weeks. I want to hear what's going on at a large scale. Let's take action. Let's do that process and then repeat, however you can do that. And then I would drill it down. I was talking to a manager. How do you have an ongoing conversation? Like, now you've got 8 people. You should be always in conversation. It shouldn't be waiting for the engagement survey. It should be in your development discussions, in your performance discussions. It should be happening all the
meetings. Yeah, in your weekly meetings.
Managers is such a critical piece, and I think it's one of the missing pieces that we still need to go deeper into developing managers and that skill of managing.
I love the process because, let's say your organization isn't on board, or you're not going to do some organizational-wide culture change or strategy project. You as an individual leader can go into your department and collect data and have conversations with your employees. And then, to ensure that you really understand what's going on. And then you can look up best practices and you can take action on your own. This is not a hopeless situation if you're in an organization right now that doesn't deem culture as important, but you do in your department. And you can make changes. Even as an individual employee, if you show up a certain way, find out other people's opinions. And see if you understand what's going on with your leader at the higher organization, and then figure out steps that you can take as an individual to improve that. And maybe you do have to leave where you're at and find somewhere new that fits you best, but that's going to take some time. And so you might as well try to show up in a way that helps you learn and helps you create an impact.
If I was coaching somebody, my advice, even in the hard times, was like, look, I think the true test and what we should all be working towards is it's not if, it's when adversity is going to hit any of us. And how do we show up in that moment, right? So I would say to that person, okay, bad environment. The work would be, how do you still show up in that environment, true to yourself, in a way that you can survive and exist, but that you can, like, you're living your values every day while you're looking for what's next. Because the truth is, if you crumble and become that, then that side is won. I'd rather you stay, like, the work you do and staying true, like, yourself and your values in a tough situation, your situation will shift, and you'll probably get close. If you're able to do that, you'll probably get closer to what's right for you. But, like, how strong are you going to show up then? And so I think that's the work. It's like, okay, how do we work through this, but you still show up with integrity every day about who you are in the face of that adversity, while we have to change it. And, like, all of us have short-term and long-term situations we're dealing with. Even in this COVID thing, I think our internal conversation was like, okay, like, how do we show up us even in this? It was great when everything's wonderful and we're a high growth company, but early on we were all nervous. We didn't know what was next. It was like, can we still show up as Culture Amp and the way we believe in? We call that culture first. And we just, always say, how are we being culture first? How are we showing up culture first? And I'd say that to an individual. What's your culture? How do you do things around here for yourself? And how do you show up in that? I don't care if it's a bad manager, the best manager in the world, that you're the stable, solid piece in that. And we need each other too. We need support. We need reflection. We need a place to go and vent. And, like, I guess I'm getting into this other thing. We just need each other. Like, we're trying to do this alone, especially men. Like it's cool. Like, get support, man. The story that we've been told that you do it alone, you're tough, and man, there's just so much, like, bad stuff going on, especially if you look at, like, populations of men around depression, suicide, addiction, and the impact we have on the world. Like make it okay. And if you're the kind of man that is that way, like, again, show up that way to make it safer for the next guy to show up and say, I'm scared or I'm angry and I don't, and, like, we're stuffing all that and it's coming out sideways and it's not helping our cultures.
Yeah. If we look at culture, it is about feelings. And
feelings are real, man. Feelings are human. Yeah. I don't care who you are. All of us feel anger, sadness, joy, shame, and there's 5 core that I hang on. Like, I don't care who you are. You know those. Sadness. Angry. Joy. Right. So I think we need to destigmatize that whole story that, like, there's something like wrong with, like, what, like, those fundamental things taught us to run away, taught us to lean in, taught us to connect with others. When, like, at a primitive level, like, when there was, fear, lion, out, gone. And when you can admit it, then you can sit in a boardroom and be like, fear, blood rate. Oh my gosh, am I in danger? No, take a breath. Cool. All right, I've been triggered. Like, but if you never admit it, you just, like, live in it. Like, how many people are just, like, all that crap's driving the bus and they have no idea. And they're, like, walking around with, like, hammers doing damage versus, like, cool, man, you're angry. All right. Like, what do you need? Like, cool. We got to get back to just, like, normalizing that, making it okay.
Mm-hmm. So if our listeners want to have a conversation with you about making it okay within their organizations or in themselves, they want to learn more about Mr. Culture Craig, Sir, I have to say Sir again, Sir Forman.
Sir Forman.
Now that you've been knighted.
All right, I've been culture knighted.
By the way, I am really happy that we have not used, this is going to defeat the whole point of what I'm trying to say, but I have to say it. We have not used the quote that culture eats strategy for breakfast at all this entire time, which is awesome because I can't listen to anything about culture without hearing that.
Although, I had this idea of running a culture camp. Like, at one point, I still love the idea. Like, we're not coming together in person. We're, like, bringing all these amazing people in workshops and letting companies, like, as a benefit, send their people to this, like, adult camp, but, like, we're doing something, we're learning about culture, and then, like, can bring it back and be certified. But, like, where I'm going with that is, like, I love summer camp. Like, so this idea of, like, making it summer campy, and then, like, one morning for breakfast, there would be, like, something that symbolizes, like, strategy. We can eat strategy. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Here you go.
Here at Culture Camp.
I love it. Just a cake, a beautiful cake spelled out in strategy. Everyone wearing culture shirts.
Pancakes, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be pancakes. Okay, where can people find you? How do they connect to you?
Well, if you want to learn more about Culture Amp, go to cultureamp.com. It's a great site. There's tons of resources. I mean, like I said, that why, like you'll see it there. Like go into our blogs, go into our content. It's written for everybody. But if you want to follow up with me, I'm a LinkedIn guy. So please follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't follow me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a note. Tell me you heard this. I'd love to see when you reach out to connect why and how you're connecting with me. That's awesome. And then the third one I want to say, remember, I said I'm building community. It's our Culture First community. You can cultureamp.com. You'll see it in the upper right-hand side community. Click on that. You can find out if there's a chapter near you. If there's not, and you're interested, you can reach out and raise your hand to start a chapter, and we'll have that discussion. Because we believe in action, and we want to give people a way. Like, it's great to sit down and talk about this stuff, but like to come together in a community, look at these things, have these conversations, and then look at taking action. Is really important because we want to drive change, like real change. And now's the moment. Like all the brakes have hit. The dust is gonna settle. We have this moment in time where inertia has stopped, which is such a gift. And we need people to stand up and like really lean into this, because when things start to rebuild, the more we have people out there saying, let's do this in a new way, this is an opportunity to rebuild things. So Culture First Community is a place to like get on that. If you're not sure where to go, just look into that. We're running tons of events. They're all virtual right now. So even if it's a Sydney, Australia chapter running an event, you're welcome. So again, go to communities@cultureamp.com, learn more, connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to stay personally connected. I'm building a community there. And then more to come. I recently bought culturecraig.com. So not yet, but soon.
It's happening. Thanks, Craig. Stick around for a second.
I will.
The broadcast. Thanks to everyone that's watching.
I hope some people got something out of this. And like I said, let's connect.
Awesome. So